What's going on, people? Ivan from I'll Get My Tools here. The epoxy table is done, looking beautiful. I'm going to take you guys through all the steps it took to get here, all the mistakes that I made, how I was able to resolve those to get to this final, finished, beautiful project. So for all your how-to DIY home renovation, repair, and landscaping, do me a favor, subscribe to my channel. Now let's get this party started. So I found this giant stump on the curb. It was anywhere from 7 to 10 inches in thickness. I let it dry out for about a year, went to Home Depot, rented this sweet Makita, and cut through this bad boy like butter. You see me, straight up lumberjack, doing it. And here I'm just chiseling out all the old dead wood. I want the epoxy to get in there, lock all that up and not fall out. So I got me and my hair and my chisel out here doing it per usual. So here I'm using my sweet draw blade. Make sure you got your gloves on, people, you'll cut your whole hand off. Just taking off the bark, most of the knots, but I did want to leave some of the character of that stump. So I didn't get too crazy with it, but it was quite tedious. So I wanted a nice clean smooth edge, so this took me quite some time, and I went through the sanding grits from 60 to like 220 to smooth this out. And in between my sanding grits I would wet it down just so that grain would pop on me, and continue to sand into the next grits. And here we're building the form. Alright, this is going to be inside this form, so when I pour the epoxy, it won't get stuck to it, and it won't spill all over my house. We ain't got time for that. Now this has to be completely level. Make sure everything's locked and loaded, because you only got one shot at this. So the epoxy won't stick to Tyvek, so I'm laying this whole form with Tyvek. Once I put down my slab, pour the epoxy, and it's dry, I'll be able to lift it out without any incident. And here I'm just siliconing all the seams, so if there is any spill out, it'll stay within the form and not ruin my house. Now it's imperative that your form is level. Epoxy is just as fluid as water, and if it's not level, the epoxy will not set up right. And then here I'm just taking some black silicone and going all around that hole, so if there is any bleed out, it should stick within that hole and not get too far out. It's very important to vacuum all the dust and sawdust so the epoxy creates a tight bond with your wood. Now I use thick set Fathom from Total Boat. This particular mix requires 2 parts of the actual epoxy and 1 part hardener. So I figured out what I needed to fill in that space and mix them all together. And Total Boat recommends you mix these together for about 3 minutes. And I chose Blue Iridescent from Diamond Pigments. It's my mica powder. I didn't really know how much to put in, so I think I got 1 teaspoon. And just do that in that bad boy. And now I'm going to take my drill, mix it, and see what I got. And this is honestly, I think, everybody's favorite part. When the epoxy and the mica gets mixed together. Look at that. Look at that. Freaking beautiful, dude. Sexy. Now, due to the depth of my pour, Total Boat recommended I do 2 1-inch pours. So that's what I did here. I did the first pour, about an inch or so. It's actually the best part of this whole project. In here, I'm just playing with it because I don't know what else I'm supposed to do. So I'm just going to put this stick in here and spin it. And, I don't know, look like I'm doing something important. Now, torching the epoxy actually has a purpose. It eliminates all the bubbles and brings some that are deeper in the epoxy up to the surface. So it looks cool, looks fancy, but it actually serves a real important purpose. Don't get too close. You don't want to burn the epoxy or the wood. Now, due to time and having kids and everything, I wasn't able to let the first layer set up. So unfortunately, I went against everybody's rules and recommendations and poured the second layer on top, maybe about 3 to 5 hours after I poured the first one. And to be honest, it worked out fine. And I also added epoxy to a couple of knots and holes just to give the whole thing a nice look when it's all said and done. Pouring epoxy is honestly one of the most addicting things. I love it. And then we do more torching. We love torching. We love playing with fire. So a lot of people have inquired about what's going on with my table. Well, when I poured it, it took about 3 to 5 days to set up. Probably more towards the 5-day thing. I had a ton of issues with this thing. I know in social media it makes it look cool, like, wow, he cut this slab, then he's pouring this fancy blue stuff, then he's got the torch going. No, that's just for like the movies or whatnot. I'm gonna tell you guys exactly what went wrong with all of this stuff. So the first problem is this slab right here. I picked it up from the curb. So in my mind, I was like, I'm gonna take the slab, I'm gonna cut into 2 end tables, it's gonna be beautiful. Well, no. The slab was about 7 inches on one side, 10, 11 on the other. It was all crooked and wavy. So I cut this piece out, then tried to plane it and sand it, and I was there for hours trying to get it somewhat level. So I figured it was pretty close, right? No, not close. You know why? Because I have a spill right here. I'll show you guys this after. Second thing was the epoxy. I went to the website, it said this particular epoxy was for 2-inch deep pours. I said, cool, that's what I need. Then I get the instructions back, and then it says only do 1 inch at a time and wait 6 to 8 hours. So I posted on social media, and then the company I bought it from is telling me to do it for only 3/4 of an inch and wait 12 to 24 hours. I'm like, what do I do with this stuff, right? So I did my own thing. I poured the first one, and then like 6, 7 hours later, I poured the second one, and it was okay, and I was happy. Second thing I messed up on is I didn't clamp the actual slab to the frame. Now, I figured this piece of wood was probably about 40, 45 pounds, so I figured if I pour some epoxy in the middle, it should be stationary, not move, right? Wrong. So I'm not really sure what happened, but before I laid the slab down, I put a piece of silicone. I put a bead of it, if you will, all around the bottom, pushed it and squished it because I knew that some would leak out, but at least that silicone bead would hold it in place and maybe hold the whole slab in place. You guys can't see it exactly, but the whole thing lifted up 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch, right? So what happened with that? While it dried, the whole thing sunk about 3/16 of an inch. Obviously this was an overspill. I got about an 1/8 here, 3/16 here. So then I went to the store and I bought a surface bit for my router. And I built a jig, which I'll show you guys later. So I'm gonna basically have to plane this up and down my surface blade 100 or 200,000 times to level off this whole thing again, because again, originally I didn't level it perfectly. I thought I was gonna be okay, but I wasn't. So that's where we're at. So I'm about to lift this right now, and I don't know what's gonna be underneath. And I'm a little nervous because it lifted up 1/2 inch, and I have some overspill over here. I've got some spill over here. My piece of wood's bending up over here. So yeah, I'm sorry I can't tell you guys this was some amazing project and I'm, you know, the next woodworker of America, but let's flip this up and see what it looks like. Jesus. What does that look like? Well, that's disgusting. Alright, so I got this flap of epoxy over here. This is the silicone that I told you about. So it actually did a pretty good job, if you can tell. It kept it in place, which was pretty cool. It's just this was the overflow. So I'm gonna have to use my router gig for both sides. And it's a lot. But that's where we're at, okay? This is the top. As you can see, looks pretty good, so I'm gonna have that router bit go up and down forever, try to level this all out. And here I'm just going to wet sand the epoxy portion of the slab. I believe I used 500 grit, maybe 800, and then 1,000. Came out pretty good. And here I used the very expensive Rubio Monocoat wood cleaner. I guess it's like a mineral spirit. It's supposed to do the same kind of thing. Clean the slab, dust, grime, dirt, before you put the Rubio Monocoat finish on it. Look at me go. And now we're going to use the ever so fancy Rubio Monocoat oil. I don't remember what the parts were. I believe it was 3 parts of the Rubio oil and 1 part of the hardener. Don't quote me on that. Just check the bottle before you use it. This is another beautiful part. Just dripping that Odie's oil all centrally. Wait for the grain to pop. Oh, there it is. Grains popping. Colors popping. This is also one of my favorite parts, just spreading that oil. Ah, so nice. And just because I love it so much, I'm going to show you how I did the top as well. Same exact deal. You just spread that oil ever so gently. Ah, que nice. And Rubio Monocoat recommends that you wipe it until it's actually dry. They don't recommend any of the finish sitting there. So do a good job, get a good rag, and massage that bad boy. Okay, now that the finish is on, this is the underside of the table. I'm just trying to find the midpoint about. Obviously it's not a perfect circle, so I'm just trying to figure out about where the midpoint is. so I can configure where my 3 legs are gonna go. Obviously it's gonna be kind of a tripod, and that's the plan. So this is just gonna give me an idea of where to put the legs, and now I'm just gonna lay it out, kind of figure out an eyeball where they should go to keep it sturdy and stable. Alright people, what's going on? So full disclosure, this table I pretty much hate it as of right now. So I did the Rubio Monocoat. Why? Because I saw these fancy woodworkers and epoxy people using Rubio Monocoat. It was okay. I wasn't really excited about it. Maybe it was my choice of wood. I don't know. So I want a little bit more sheen. Did some research. They said use some lacquer. I did 2 coats of lacquer. Still didn't like it. So you know what I did? This is polyurethane. Dude, this thing is so freaking flammable right now. Don't light a match. Don't even blow a fart near this thing. It's gonna effing explode. Alright? I got oil, lacquer, polyurethane. So, I'm doing a little scratch coat. This is a 220. Scratch this up really quick. I'm gonna do another coat of polyurethane, scratch it, and then a 3rd coat. And then I'm done. It is what it is. It's a freaking table. A little product that I wanted to do. I want to get into the epoxy world. So that's what it is. Alright? Scratch coat, poly, scratch coat, poly. And F this thing, man. Remember, with any oil-based finishes, always use a natural bristle brush. None of that polymer stuff, alright?